some more serious stories have perhaps flown under the radar these games. On Friday, the judoka Mohammad Samim Faizad, one of 6 Afghans at the Olympics, was provisionally suspended after failing a doping test for a banned steroid. Elsewhere, the Chinese swimming team has faced some tough questions from journalists. Wang Shun and Zheng Yufei, who've both been on the podium, were among 23 Chinese swimmers who've tested positive for a banned substance ahead of the Tokyo Olympics. Recent media reports revealed that they were allowed to compete in those games without being sanctioned. We can talk a little bit more about this subject with Andy Brown, who's a journalist and editor of Sports Integrity Initiative. He's been writing about sports governance for 15 years. So maybe before getting into this Chinese swimmer's story, can we perhaps touch on doping more broadly? Is it still as big a problem as it once was, would you say?
I think eradicating doping is always going to be athletes and indeed states who want to take a shortcut to success as part of the system of winning medals. And gaining personal bests.
So if we talk a bit about these Chinese swimmers then, they took banned substances before being allowed to compete in Tokyo. We know this. They even went on to win 3 gold medals. So how was it that they were allowed to compete in the end?
Well, basically what's supposed to happen is under anti-doping, it's supposed to be strict liability. So an athlete who tests positive, much like if you're guilty of a driving offence, you have to prove your own innocence. So you have to prove that the substance came into your system via food, medication, something like that, contamination. But the key point in all this is you're supposed to be provisionally suspended while that investigation takes place. The Chinese swimmers tested for low levels of primetazine, very low levels, but they weren't provisionally suspended, which is where the suspicion starts. Why didn't that happen? Well, it appears there is kind of a sort of hole in the code here. An initial review takes place, after which the athletes are supposed to be provisionally suspended. That didn't happen. They decided that contamination was the most likely scenario. They didn't provisionally suspend them. And WADA even kind of admits to this. In a recent statement, kind of hole in the code. What did it say? It said, WADA is generally concerned about the number of cases that are being closed without sanction when it is not possible to challenge contamination through arbitration for sport. So in other words, because China didn't provisionally suspend these athletes, WADA had absolutely nothing to do.
Okay, and we're now seeing a bit of a debate emerge between American law enforcement, the FBI, who are looking into this case, which the International Olympic Committee doesn't seem to like. Can you explain what's going on with that tug of war?
I mean, there's been sort of political rumblings between the US anti-doping authority and WADA and the IOC for some time. I mean, this goes back to the Rodchenkov anti-doping. They thought criminalised the provision of doping substances to athletes. And WADA actually campaigned against that. Since then, they've kind of been at loggerheads about liability for doping. And the US position is that China provisionally suspended, as most anti-doping organisations are required to do. If you test positive, you're supposed to be provisionally suspended. WADA didn't do that. WADA didn't appeal the Chinese authorities' decisions not to do that. So that's where all of this is coming from. And I think the authorities are looking into whether they should have done that, whether there's been some kind of cover-up here.
All right, Andy Brown, editor of Sports Integrity Initiative, thank you very much for your time and for speaking to France 24.